Aloha kakahiaka kako. We are in the Tuesday, March 28, 2023, 9:30 a.m. Committee on Water and Land hearing. I am the Vice Chair, Mahina Poipoi, and I am going to chair this meeting today. And I have Chair Linda Ichiyama. So we will go ahead and get started on SB 193 SD1 relating to the State Fire Council. We have Dilanar Don Chang, Chair Don Chang, signed up to testify.
Aloha, my chair, vice chair, members of the committee. I'm Michael Walker. I'm the fire protection forester for Division of Forestry and Wildlife, Department of Land and Natural Resources. The department stands on its written testimony, and I'm here for any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Members, that is the only person signed up to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in person or on Zoom? Okay, state your name for the record.
Aloha, Akayaka. I'm Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of Kapalama NSW. So we're just providing comments. We are in strong support. And so the purpose of this act is to add the membership of the State Fire Council and to the membership of the advisory committees that the council may appoint representatives in the Hawaii State Aircraft Rescue Firefighting Unit and the Division of Forestry and Wildlife of the Department of Land and Natural Resources to reflect all the non-federal firefighting agencies in the state. I think this is a very good thing to collaborate the city and the state, especially in situations of fires, which even low-level fires are can require an emergency response. And there are some situations where, the state and the county should have a little bit more autonomy. But in this situation, working together in regards to protecting the general public from the effects of devastation is something that requires collaboration. So thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here or on Zoom wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions for the testifiers? Okay, seeing none, there's no one else to testify on that measure, so we will move on to HCR 78 and HR 82. This is a resolution urging the Department of Facility Maintenance of the City and County of Honolulu to conduct an assessment and prepare and execute a plan to maintain Manoa Stream. There's no one signed up to testify. We do have multiple individuals in support, as well as Be Ready Manoa in support. Is there anyone in person or on Zoom wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the next measure, HCR 54. This is a resolution requesting the Hawaii County Department of Water Supply to convene a working group to examine opportunities for increasing water access and strengthening water infrastructure for underserved communities on Hawaii Island. We do not have anyone signed up to testify, but we do have multiple individuals in support. Okay. We are moving on to. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to testify or on Zoom? Okay. Then we will move on to HR 38, urging the Solid Waste Division of the County of Hawaii, Department of Environmental Management to add additional days of operation and extend the hours of operation for recycling and transfer stations in Puna. There's no one signed up to testify. Is there anyone in the audience or on Zoom wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to HCR 62, HR 64, This is requesting the Department of Parks and Recreation of the City and County of Honolulu to restore the field of Maunawili Valley Neighborhood Park and develop a plan to restore the entire park. There's no one signed up to testify. We did receive testimony, written testimony in support. Is there anyone in the audience or on Zoom wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none. We will move on to HCR 107 and HR 113, urging the City and County of Honolulu to exempt from real property tax those property owners of residential units within 1/2 mile of an active municipal solid waste landfill or construction and demolition landfill. There is testimony for this one. Anthony McCanna Paris on Zoom. Oh, you're here.
Aloha, Chair Ichiyama, Vice Chair, who's chairing today, Mahina Poi Poi, and members of the committee. Makana Paris on behalf of the Hawaii Worker Stabilization Fund. We come before you in gratitude, mostly because of the work that was done by the legislative body, passing in 2020 an environmental justice regulation that made the largest buffer zone known to man across the country at 1/2 mile to make sure that Opala wasn't between people, their homes, their schools and hospitals, and protecting our conservation districts. So this resolution really actually targets the communities here on Oahu and encouraging the city to do its part by actually helping to provide for relief for those that are currently suffering. The legislation passed 2 years ago was to make sure that no future community will be burdened by landfills, but we still need to address the communities that are burdened by landfills today. In 1985, PVT landfill started their operations in Nanakuli through what we would call political and legal loopholes, where they were supposed to put up 2-story, land use commission authorized affordable housing. They ended up making a landfill. Now, in 1985, there are hundreds of residences already there, and today there are more. The community was there before the landfill, so we hope that we can actually provide them some relief by providing tax relief so that they can then put in air filtration systems, taking care of their funeral expenses and medical expenses that they have. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify and available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Ed Werner on Zoom.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Just trying to get this thing good. Yeah, my name is Ed Werner. I lived in Nanakuli my entire life, about 60 years. We lived alongside the landfill on Mohi Street. My dad resigned there in 1961. That we brought my dad's home. Resigning in the back of our home, our backyard, PVT landfill apparently came into Nanakuli in 1985. And, it was never the same as, when they came into our neighborhood. And I have a lot of family that live alongside the landfill and the entire Nanakuli. If you blindfold me, I can get my way around in Nanakuli. That's how long I've been in Nanakuli. I saying that, this tax break will do really good. Right now, my dad passed away 2 years ago, so he won't be able to get them if we can get this thing through. But almost half of my entire family and with my family, we got about 4,000 in the state. That's the last time I went to a reunion. But if you guys can please help and support, this tax break would do good for a lot of friends, family, and kupuna that live and reside in Nanakuli. I would appreciate that, and just mahalo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Werner. Is there anybody in the audience or on Zoom wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions for the testifiers? Okay, thank you. We will move on to HCR 21 and HR 23, urging the City and County of Honolulu to remove the Ocean Safety and Lifeguard Services Division from the Emergency Services Department and establish it as a new separate department. There is, we have one person signed up to testify, Joey Cadiz on Zoom.
Did I do all right, Mom? No. Huh?
Aloha, this is Joey.
Please go ahead.
Can you? Okay. Aloha, everybody. Representatives, mahalo for this opportunity. I am a lifeguard, and I am just speaking in support of this resolution to hold the Department of Ocean Safety, or to create the Department of Ocean Safety for its own autonomy and self-determination to allocate resources and the betterment of public safety all around. So just wanted to share it and say thank you for your support.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Please come up and state your name.
Aloha, Akayaka, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee. Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of Kapalama NSW. The Ocean Safety and Lifeguard Services Division provides ocean safety service for the island of Oahu, which features 227 miles of coastline. And the support includes ocean rescue, prevention, emergency medical first response, dispatched mobile patrol, education, outreach, and injury prevention programs, all related to ocean safety. And this division is the primary responder for emergencies on the beaches and in the near-shore waters for Oahu. Near-shore waters extend from the shoreline to 1 mile offshore. And this zone from the beach to 1 mile offshore is where the vast majority of ocean recreation activities happen. And the division is divided into 5 operational districts: the South Shore, Windward Coast, North Shore, Leeward Coast, and Hanama Bay. So because of the responsibilities such as the ocean activities, managing the ocean activities, the kayak rentals, the stand-up paddle boarding activities, it seems like the resolution is requesting that the department be an autonomous department from the Emergency Services Department. The Emergency Services Department from the County of Honolulu is HFD Ambulance Corps, Crisis Outreach Response Engagement. So the emergency dispatch teams to respond to emergencies ranging from homelessness to domestic violence and everything else. So we are in support. It seems like this already happened, though. So we are in support. Yeah. Thank you
Okay,
for the
thank
opportunity
you.
to testify.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify in person or on Zoom? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions for the testifiers? Okay, we will move on to HCR 106 and HR 112, requesting the Department of Facility Maintenance of the City and County of Honolulu to dredge and clean the Ulehava Stream and Canal. We do have Anthony Makana Paris in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Makana Paris on behalf of the Hawaii Island Worker Stabilization Fund. Again, in our continued effort to work with the community towards environmental justice for the west side of Oahu, we come before asking for your support to encourage collaboration between the federal, state, and county governments to actually ensure that Uleava Channel and Stream is open. Currently, because of the way that the United States Army Corps of Engineers designed the channelization, they never talk to the kupuna, so they never know that the sands actually kind of swell up and build. So for the last 2 decades, most of the time, the canal and the stream will actually be blocked off from being dispersed into the ocean. And why is this a major concern? Because in Nanakuli, along the stream, it actually borders directly along PVT landfill. So all of the effluent, all of the leachate, this process goes into that stream and doesn't get dispersed into the Pacific Ocean. So most of the community will actually talk about the issues from dust concerns. There is still those people that fish, that actually goes and swims and engages in water recreation in the area. That is huge concern. So all we're doing is trying to make sure that the three branches of government at the federal, state, and local level coordinate so we can find a long-term solution, and also requesting that the Department of Health alleviate the fears of the community by actually doing testing periodically instead of just relying upon the non-testing from the PVT land company, which is in violation, in our opinion, of the law, because they have not posted testing for water quality for the last 4 years. Mahalo.
Thank you. Ed Werner on Zoom.
Hey, hello again, Ed Werner. This is Ed Werner. Hello, Chair and Vice Chair and the committee. Yeah, like I said, I was raised and born in Nanakuli. When I said I was raised and born, I was born in Grandma's house in 1962 on Farrington Highway. But my dad brought us home out in Mohi Street alongside that canal. You know, growing up as a kid, we used to play in a quarry. It's now called the landfill, where PVT, when put the landfill there. They used to have the river used to run right through PVT landfill. And so when you used to have these heavy rains, came down from Pu'uhelea, it's the mountain that in Nanakuli. So that river used to pick up all the water that came down from that Pu'uhelea mountain, used to run right through the landfill. But when the landfill came in 1985, they were enclosed that access to the canal. So when we used to have heavy rain, the thing used to wash that Huliava River out and used to open up the river, and we could get water flush in and out through the rainwater. But apparently now the landfill there cut out the access of the river. So now, not at any time, even with heavy rain, the river just don't open up. So my daughter lived right alongside that canal on Prince Kahanu, and my cousins and aunties live alongside on Mohihihi Street alongside the river. And it's this, on certain days, the scent and the smell of that Huliava River, it's unbearable, the smell. And like I said, I was raised and born on that side. I used to surf at Huliava's. And we used to see the city and county would always come and excavate that place to open them up. But still yet, the backside of that canal was never being flushed out. So if, we can get some kind of engineer, maybe the Army Corps, the city, DLNR, to kind of, see what they can implement to get that river flushed out. Whether you guys gonna have to, to put a wall out like we have in Waianae Comprehensive. If you look at those rivers, the wall go way out and the river is always clean. I think for us to get that thing, I think we would have to extend that wall out, because like I said, I surfed there. That reef is really shallow, and city and county can excavate the sand out, and they get trucks removing the sand to other places. But days after, the thing just build up. So I just saying that as experience growing up as a kid and utilizing Huliava Beach Park, I seen it all over there. So, and the smell, the stench is just unbearable. So I support if we can get this thing drenched and clean. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in person or on Zoom wishing to testify? State your name for the record.
Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of Kapalama NSW. So we've participated in some of Department of Facility Maintenance's volunteer events, and as Kapalama NSW within the neighborhood of Kalihi. And so what they do is they recruit volunteers to clean up some of the canals and parks, and then the community can either adopt a park or continue to participate at each of the events. And the volunteer events are hosted through the Stormwater Division. And while we were in conversation with DFM, I just wanted to point out that this is going to be relevant to what the resolution is inquiring about. Some of the DFM procedures, they don't allow volunteers or people to go deep into some of the streams. So that may require legislation to implement that sort of cleanup. So thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions for the testifiers? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to HCR 135 and HR 136, requesting the Department of Facility Maintenance of the City and County of Honolulu to clean certain streams and canals in Waipahu. We don't have anyone signed up to testify. We did receive written testimony in support. Is there anyone in person or on Zoom wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to HCR 153 and HR 154, requesting the Department of Hawaiian Homelands to conduct a study that evaluates possible methods of flooding remediation and flood aversion for certain areas of the island of Molokai. We do have DHHL in person to testify.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Oval o Oriana Leal. The department stands on its written testimony with comments, and I'm available for questions. Mahalo.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in person or on Zoom wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions for the testifier? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to HCR 102, HR 139, requesting the wastewater branch of the Environmental Management Division of the Department of Health to conduct a feasibility study on the use of organic biodegradable water clarifiers for cesspool water remediation. We do have Department of Health on Zoom.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. Sina Pruder with the Department of Health. We stand on our written testimony providing comments on this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition in person.
Good morning, Chair Ichiyama, Vice Chair Poi Poi, members of the committee. Ted Boland on behalf of the Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition. I served for 15 years as the Deputy Attorney General for the Department of Health on wastewater matters, and was 4 years on the cesspool conversion working group. So cesspools are near and dear to my heart, which is a little strange, I know. I think it is very important that we investigate new technologies and find ways to reduce cesspool harms at lower costs than conventional septic systems. The cesspool conversion working group had a whole section that dealt with technologies and recognized the need for new looks at this. I'm not sure that the organic, what is it called? Organic biodegradable water clarifiers are necessarily the best technology or not. I don't know. It's just one of many is my point, and we should be broader in terms of our look. There is a bill, Senate Bill 285 SG2 HD2, that provides funding for the University of Hawaii Water Resources Research Center to conduct a demonstration project to examine and demonstrate new wastewater technologies. I think the WRRC is a better entity to do, more qualified to do this than the Department of Health as a research project. So I would suggest some amendments to this resolution to substitute WRRC, and also to broaden the reach of this resolution to not just this one technology that is mentioned, but all potential new technologies that can help us with cesspool remediation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. PJY Global Consultants.
Yes, Chair and Co-Chair and Committee. My name is Tracy Oshimura. I represent a company called Town Tech Solutions that is asking to have this solution, the biodegradable solution that the gentleman just mentioned, looked to be studied as a enhancement to the solution cesspools. This enhancement is would be using a proprietary organic formula which is derived from sea kelp, contains no hazardous chemicals, is 100% biodegradable. It is well proven from 22 years of use in different countries such as Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Malaysia, India, Hong Kong, China, Japan, and Ireland. It contains no live organisms, hazardous chemicals. It's user safe, non-hazardous, non-flammable. The resulting effluent after the cesspools are enhanced with this system would result in an effluent that is superior to that of even septic tanks. It is very easy to apply and can be rapidly deployed. The 82,000 cesspools out there could have this unit installed in 2 years or less at less than $900 a piece. It would consist of a simple delivery system that is tamper-proof, solar-powered, that would be installed by the current cesspool treating companies. And because of the extremely low cost and ability to rapidly deploy this, we could start to mitigate the damages, by the ongoing pollution that's being done by the cesspools while solutions are being looked at. And this can be done 25 years ahead of the scheduled 2050 deadline which is currently in place. That's about it. That's all I have, and I can take any questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Angela Melody Young testifying this time on behalf of CARES. And so we're just going to provide comments. So wastewater treatment plants have been in existence for quite a long time. And the purpose of these plants is to treat tons of solid and liquid waste generated from homes, industries, and other places. So clarifiers in wastewater treatment plants are an integral part of the system. And the clarifier, what it does is that it coagulates the tiny particles and it cleans out the system. So the concentrated impurities are then taken care of. So we are in strong support. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. And the biodegradable part, organic biodegradable part, is a good thing because such as the Genki Alawai project, they invented something, it's like bioremediation technology. So they throw the little Genki balls into the stream, and then it uses like an organic scientific formula that they created, and it purifies the water. So this is a good thing for the state to invest in. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions for the testifiers? Seeing none, we will move on to HCR 126, HR 127, urging the Department of Health to take certain actions regarding fugitive dust. We do have testimony, I believe, Department of Health.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Marianne Rossio from the Department of Health. The department stands on its written testimony in opposition, and we're here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have the Hawaii Farm Bureau in opposition. They did not sign up to testify. Is there anyone else in the audience or on Zoom?
Aloha, Akayaka Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES. Sorry, thank you for your patience. I'm just waiting for my notes to pull up. So fugitive dust is particulate matter resulting from commercial and business activities that is generated in the open air. And it includes both the visible and non-visible particulate matter. So this is, the resolution is urging Department of Health to take action. And we just want to provide comments that this is a matter for the Environmental Protection Agency, who regulates fine particulate matter in the air. So perhaps it is something to consult with EPA for. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Anyone else in person or on Zoom wishing to testify? Seeing none. Members, any questions for the testifiers? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 104, HR 110, requesting the Department of Land and Natural Resources to identify all state and county roads, landmarks, monuments, and public parks that use the name Diamond Head, and identify the process for renaming these roads, landmarks, monuments, and public parks from Diamond Head to Leahi. We have DLNR signed up to testify.
Aloha, Vice Chair Poi Poi, Chair Ichiyama, members. Alan Carpenter, Assistant Administrator with the State Parks Division. The department will stand on its testimony supporting the concept and offering comments. And I'd like to, I'm glad Rep. Morikawa just walked back in because I wanted to acknowledge the efforts of her community to advocate for and successfully change the name of Russian Fort Elizabeth State Historical Park to Pa'ulaula State Historic Site, which was long overdue. And I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the only person signed up to testify. We have one individual in opposition, one other individual in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? In person or on Zoom? Okay, seeing none. Members, questions for the testifiers? Seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 50, requesting the Department of Land and Natural Resources to provide updated statistics and facts relating to the decline of Palila on Mauna Kea and investigate the factors causing the decline of the Palila population. We have DLNR signed up to testify.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. My name is Lindsay Neatman. I'm representing the Department of Land and Natural Resources. The department stands on its written testimony, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Anyone else in person or on Zoom wishing to testify? Members, any questions for the testifiers? Seeing none, Rep. Ganadin.
Surprising. To DLNR. Of course, the Palila is one of many native bird species facing extinction. Can you tell the committee, and I guess the public, how the efforts to reduce mosquitoes are going?
Yeah, we actually just had the FONSI signed by National Park Service, and it looks like it's going to be signed by the chair of DLNR to start mosquito control on East Maui. So this will be the first attempt in the state to use the incompatible insect technique to control mosquitoes at landscape scale. We're working on an EA for Kauai, and then we're collaborating with Department of Health for a statewide EA. However, currently the Palila aren't threatened by avian malaria because they're higher than the mosquito line. Does that answer your question? So it's in progress. We're expecting landscape scale mosquito control to be on the landscape probably in about a year.
In about a year. So
on Hawaii Island within a year?
Not on Hawaii Island. So first East Maui in about a year, then Kauai probably 6 months to a year later, and then we don't really have an estimated timeline for Hawaii Island, but it will be coming. We haven't even started the state EA yet. So.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Members, any more questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 170, HR 175, urging the Board of Land and Natural Resources to establish a task force to prepare a feasibility plan for the transition of the management of the Makua Military Reservation to the state from the United States Army upon the expiration of General Lease Number S-3848. We have Russell Suji signed up to testify from DLNR.
I'm sorry, I just unmuted. Russell Tsuji for the department. We provided comments on the proposed resolution, and we are seeking, just noting that the task force, unless it's exempt under Chapter 92, there will be some costs associated with that, and we ask that an appropriate number of money be appropriated and one position be added to manage the task force. I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. We also had Chair Don Chang signed up for in-person testimony.
Yes, we're all on the same.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience or on Zoom wishing to testify? Okay, members, questions for the testifiers? Rep. Ganadin.
To the Department of Land and Natural Resources. I don't know who. What kind of condition do you, if Makua is returned back to the state, what kind of condition do you expect to find it in? I mean, what kind of remediation might be necessary, environmental or otherwise?
Okay. Good morning, Ian Hirokawa with DLNR Land Division. I don't believe we know exactly what the condition of Makua is. I mean, we would, prior to the lease ends, we would have to make that determination, and I believe we would seek, appropriate remediation before the lands, if they were to be returned to the state, seek that.
All right. Is it allowable by the BLNR and the DLNR to intervene now and to determine the environmental status of the land? I'm just referencing a Supreme Court case from, I believe, 2019.
Well, we're bound by the terms of the existing lease, so that would be a limitation. I mean, whatever is provided for in the lease, we could do, but I don't think we could go and unilaterally impose requirements outside of the lease.
How can you determine the intervention necessary to remediate this land prior to the termination of the lease?
Go ahead, Russell.
I was just going to say, maybe this might help the representative. At this point, the military and the Army has indicated an intention to retain those lands at Makua. In the event that at any time we felt that they would not be retaining those lands, we would seek and ask that the military do a study to evaluate the condition of those lands. For the state to take that upon ourselves would require significant funding if we were to do it, and frankly, we don't have that kind of funds yet. But they have expressed a strong desire to continue retention. I believe they have started the preparation of an EIS for that purpose.
Okay, I'm just thinking of the proposed federal legislation that was introduced by outgoing Congressman Kahele last year, considering returning this land to the state. So, to clarify, you're saying that only if the military intends to not renew its lease, then you would evaluate the land?
No, I said that we could ask them to evaluate the lands under the lease. It's not a requirement It's not an express condition, so they'd have to agree. But we might, if they are unwilling, then we might decide to do it ourselves, but we need the appropriate amount of funding. We need their approval to get on the site as well as testing. But it does cost a significant amount of money. I think they would be in the best position to at least start off with an initial investigation on the condition of the leased premises. Please understand, in Makua, they have two different parts to those. One is the state leased lands, and they also have what we call federal controlled lands, or it's really not part of the state inventory.
Thank you.
Members, any more questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 70, HR 71, requesting the Environmental Advisory Council of the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to collaborate with the University of Hawaii to update Chapter 343 Hawaii Revised Statutes to reflect all factors that shall be considered for the environmental impact statement process, and requesting the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development and the Department of Land and Natural Resources to hold public forums on the future use of state lands currently leased to the military. First, we have DLNR with comments.
Good morning, Ian Hirokawa with DLNR Land Division. We'll stand on our written testimony offering comments and be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have State Environmental Advisory Council on Zoom.
All right. Aloha, Vice Chair Poi Poi, Chair Ichiyama. My name is Onao Nathon, and I'm the chair of the State Environmental Advisory Council. We submitted written comments on both resolutions. I did want to just highlight a couple of concerns that the council has. As you folks might know, the council is made up of up to 15 members, and we are all volunteers. However, we have no budget. We're administratively attached to the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. While we understand and support the intent of these resolutions, you know, these are kind of big ask of the council, which again has no budget and is a completely volunteer board. So a couple of things that, you know, kind of worry us is the timing of the need to do what is asked, which is really a comprehensive review again of the environmental impact statement rules. Now, most of the council members started, myself included, in about 2016, 2017. And we recently completed a comprehensive update of the rules, which took about, 2.5, 3 years to do. So that first deadline to, go through the rules again and complete a report to the legislature 20 days before the 2024 session is it's quick, especially given, again, that we don't have dedicated staff or a budget. And now we're not really sure, who's going to be leading the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. So we would urge the legislature to really reconsider that 2024 deadline. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer those for you. Thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next, we have Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
Aloha, Chair, Representatives. I'm Tom Eisen, the senior and currently the only planner with OPSD's Environmental Review Program. The program formerly known as OEQC. We sent in our submitted comments. I wanted to reiterate the comments from the Environmental Advisory Committee, our sister agency, both attached to DBED. The funding of them is essentially we allow one of our staff to support them. That staff is retiring, so going forward it may be a challenge to deal with this ambitious ask. But I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no one else signed up to testify. Is there anyone in person or on Zoom wishing to testify? Please state your name for the record.
Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES. So putting on a different hat here to, talk to you about our advocacy and research in regards to this resolution. So HCR 70, and it is requesting the Environmental Advisory Council and Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to collaborate with the University of Hawaii to update Chapter 343 Hawaii Revised Statutes to reflect all factors that shall be considered for the environmental impact statement process. And Act 152 is the act enacted for the Environmental Advisory Council. The council serves as a liaison between the director and the public on matters concerning ecology and environmental quality. The council monitors the progress of the state, county, and federal agencies in achieving the state's environmental goals and policies, and publishes its findings in its annual reports. The council also conducts forums for various outreach activities. So, the chapter they are seeking to amend is Chapter 343, so about the quality of humanities environments. From Chapter 343-1, the legislature finds that the quality of humanities environment is critical to the humanities' well-being, and that humanities activities have broad and profound effects upon the interrelations of the environment. And an environmental review process will integrate the review of environmental concerns with existing planning processes of the state and counties, and alert decision makers to significant environmental effects, which may result from the implementation of certain actions. So, this is something that should be amended in light of all that has happened, because the resolution is talking about the effects of the military in regards to environmental impact. And according to the Hawaii Constitution 11.9, I think it's chapter 11.9, environmental rights, each person has the right to a clean and healthful environment, as defined by laws relating to environmental quality, including control of pollution and conservation, protection, and enhancement of natural resources. Any person may enforce this right against any party, public or private, through appropriate legal proceedings, subject to reasonable limitations and regulations as provided by law. And so there you have it. It's something mandated by the Constitution that we have our rights to environmental quality.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none. Members, questions? Rep. Gannon.
To Ms. Thorne.
Hello.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for the work that you're doing.
You're welcome.
Considering the community discussion around significant parcels of state land that have been leased to the United States military, which are going to be up for renegotiation, do you think the state is doing enough to involve community input in a conversation about the prospective return of this land or the continuation of these leases?
Well, that's a big question, and I can't say that I know exactly what the state has been doing on those questions. Having conversations about them, I think, is a good step, and these resolutions do ask that DLNR, the Environmental Council, and Office of Planning hold forums to have those discussions with the community. I think I don't know for sure. I haven't looked at these leases myself, but with the upcoming deadlines for these leases to expire coming up, now is probably the time to start those discussions. In our written comments, we did have a question, and maybe this committee can answer it for us, is what the resolution really means by holding public forums, right? What do you folks have in mind for that? So that's something that if we do proceed with the ask in these resolutions, that we get some clarity from the legislature on what do you envision for these public forums. Again, working within the means, as you folks understand, the AC doesn't have a budget. We have to take any money that we use from OPSD, and I don't know what budget they have to implement these resolutions. But that would be something that I think we'd want to work with, your committee, the legislature, and others to figure out what types of forums and how do we get community input for this process.
Let's just say in a perfect world, you got enough funding to do these kinds of community forums. What would be an appropriate deadline?
Well, like I said, with the environmental impact statement rules, we did a complete overhaul starting really in earnest in about 2016, 2017 with the 15 volunteers on this board. And so that, we had multiple public meetings for the council, which are sunshined. We had a bunch of drafts, we had online commenting, and we, in addition to that, We did public meetings on each island, and I think we did actually a couple on each island. So I would say a better deadline would be in that 2 to 3 year range. A lot of the people that are on the council now, myself included, I think I term out next year, a lot of the folks that were involved in this last process. So getting the right people on the council and getting a really good director for OPSD. Scott Glenn was the director of OEQC when we went through the rulemaking process, and he was really the one that was behind envisioning that process that involved the public. And we think it really worked, because since the rules have been in place since 2019, people seem to be generally happy with them. We reorganized them. It was the first time they were updated since 1996, really, right? So I think getting strong leadership, not only on the council, not only getting a budget, but getting strong leadership in OPSD with somebody that can get this process done.
Thank you. When does this contract renegotiation or land back return, when does this terminate? When does this conversation end?
Oh, are you directing that question to me?
Yes.
I don't know when the military leases are up, so I think that's a question better directed to the lessor, to DLNR.
Can I redirect?
DLNR.
Thank you, Ms. Thorne.
Thank you.
To answer, Ian Hirakawa with DLNR Land Division. Most of the leases end between 2028 and 2029, I believe.
So that puts our deadline here at the legislature to have these conversations 2026, 27, would you say?
Yeah, at the latest, yeah, if the legislature intends to act, yes. I mean, yeah, I'd say 2020 is and it depends on what's passed too, right? I mean, but yeah, I would say that's kind of the latest that would set your deadline as a legislature.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions, members? Okay, we are going to move on to HCR 25, HR 27, requesting the auditor to conduct a performance audit of the operations and management of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation. We have DLNR for testimony.
Good morning, Vice Chair Poi Poi, committee members, Ed Underwood, Administrator with the Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation, testifying on behalf of the department. We'll stand on our comments and our testimony, and like to note that the division is audited every year financially, and we've been through numerous performance audits in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Margaret Hallahan on Zoom. Not present.
I think she's present. She texted me.
Oh, well, if she logs back on, we can come back at the end. Kate Thompson on Zoom, in person. Okay, that's you.
I'm just going to say log on.
Aloha, my name is Kate Thompson, Representative Poi Poi and Linda, who's not here, Hishiyama Chair. I really happy to be able to come and testify today. My name is Kate Thompson, and I'm a boater and sailor, and I'm also had my recreational sailboat in the Alawai Boat Harbor for 25 years, so I'm very experienced with the harbor. I also have been alerted to the RFP for privatization for the harbor, and feel that the recreational lands were deemed in 1957 to be fully recreational and to not be commercialized, and somehow that's morphed over the years to the possibility of privatizing our recreational harbors, and the loss of the 300 recreational parking that was negotiated in 2008. We gave up 250 parking spots at that point, and the revenues from that parking were supposed to be used to support the free parking and those negotiations that were big public forums in elementary schools, and also a paid mediator at that time. So I would like to just say that the strategic plans have been rebutted by voters in something called like the golf report, which we're happy to send you a copy of, and shows that the strategic plan is not actually strategic, except for to sell the lands. And we also feel that a lot of the contracts that have been made, like with Honeybee, the electrical contract on the 800 row, and other contracts have shown that DOBOR representatives are not actually, should not be actually doing the contracts and need more oversight instead of less oversight. We appreciate the opportunity to have an audit, because although the testimony today from DNLR that there have been audits, there hasn't been a true performance audit since 2011, and we feel that these are strategic, important public lands that help the middle class, lower middle class get recreation, and we need to preserve them. Thank you so much for this testimony opportunity, and I support the audit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Scott Allen.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. In my written testimony in support of this measure, I call attention to DOBOR's refusal to issue available liveaboard permits at state harbors and the resulting loss of revenue to special boating fund, potentially reaching into millions of dollars. I also call attention to the harsh approach DOBOR took with harbor residents during the pandemic, when they not only raised rent for those living aboard their vessels, but also substantially increased late fees for inability to pay these new rates. All of this during a pandemic and a persistent housing crisis. I stand here this morning as a taxpayer, public servant, and member of the harbor community, frustrated by years of DOBOR leadership saying they cannot manage our harbors without a public-private partnership. This is frustrating because DOBOR leadership is clearly making at least some decisions based on their own personal opinions rather than HRS or the greater public good, at the expense of resources which can help maintain our state harbors. Here I call attention to the difference between a lack of resources to fulfill mandates and a lack of will. DOBOR leadership's lack of will over the years is not only eroding our harbor infrastructure, but community trust in government. I wholeheartedly support the managerial audit of DOBOR and ask, where appropriate, our harbor management structure be compared to other harbor systems successfully managed by public systems of governance, such as the Port of Seattle. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I will remain available for questions.
Thank you. We'll go back to Margaret Hallahan on Zoom.
Hello, thank you very much for hearing me today. I strongly support Bill HR 27. I'm sorry I can't see you, but hopefully you can see me. Since it's a 2-year time span, I'm hoping that you could create a halfway, midway, if this passes, so that a public informational session could be done. So we could lean in and really make sure that the process of the audit will be conducted in the intent of this bill. Also, I would like to make sure that you add on the film industry permits to be reviewed, any food concessions, like they gave a parking spot in the Alawai to someone to sell food. There is other types of food revenue and permits that could be reviewed for income. And of course, outrigger canoeing and other sports should be, less permitted for less, like moorings for indigenous Hawaiian sailing should be at a less rate. The mooring rates shouldn't be continuously going up for regular people. I'd also like to say that a lot of damage can be happening in the next 2 years because there's not enough oversight. So possibly there could be some type of review, some type of control and oversight for these 2 years that the audit's happening. I'd also like to suggest on my testimony, I have 2 links to hearings by Rick Robinson, who's the ethic board for the state of Hawaii against Edward Underwood, and his frustration and problems with trying to move forward with ethics reviews with the within the government. So anyway, I stand by my testimony. I'm here for questions. I'm so grateful that you are all taking a very serious look at this very serious issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are the only people signed up to testify. Is there anyone else in the audience or on Zoom wishing to testify? Okay, please state your name for the record.
Angela Melody Young, testifying to provide comments on behalf of CARES. So this resolution is requesting an auditor to conduct a performance audit of the operations and management of DOBOR. And the auditor is requested to examine and include in its report whether the division is using government resources in compliance with statutes, rules, and policies, and whether the division's activities are achieving their objectives, and whether those activities are being conducted effectively, efficiently, economically, ethically, and equitably. So it seems like there were some complaints in the community, and we're just providing comments that for the inspection that we are in support, and that the government conducts appeals and audits to review if there were any internal errors or if there are any flaws with the system. And we, as an advocacy research branch, have great faith in our government. So we know that they will get to the bottom of this. Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Seeing none, members, any questions for the testifiers? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to HCR 80, HR 85, designating Hawaii's coral reefs as critical natural infrastructure and strongly supporting nature-based solutions such as coral reef restoration for risk reduction. We have DLNR signed up in person.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair. Luna Kekoa with the Division of Aquatic Resources. I'm a program manager here on behalf of the department. We stand in strong support. I did want to share that this was one of the outcomes from the U.S. Coral Reef Task Force this past August, September. So one of the things that they shared was the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, 2 case studies. So Puerto Rico has this. When the hurricanes came, it was a lot easier for them to get money to help restore coral reefs whereas Virgin Islands didn't have this, and they were sharing how hard it was. So just to share kind of like the lessons learned that we heard and why this was important. Here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition.
Good morning, Vice Chair Poipoi, Vice Chair Ichiyama, members of the committee. Ted Boland on behalf of the Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition, in strong support of these resolutions. It is very important that we have coral infrastructure to protect our shorelines and everything else about Hawaii, really. And the use of nature-based solutions such as coral reef restoration for risk reduction is a very important way to achieve some of that protection. As the previous speaker, I think, was referring to, the Federal Emergency Management Agency gives out grants for states and others to work on hazard mitigation assistance. Coral reef restoration or for risk reduction is a cost-effective hazard mitigation strategy in Hawaii. And as the last speaker was referring to, I think the experience has been that legislative recognition in a state's political support is an important metric which FEMA considers in directing activities and funding. So this resolution would help, I think, Hawaii get additional funding from FEMA in grants. And we would strongly support that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in person or on Zoom? Okay, those are the only people signed up to testify. Members, any questions?
Just really quick quickly. Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of CARES. So the coral reefs. So internationally, the EPA estimates 1 billion people worldwide benefit from the many ecosystems of the coral reefs because it provides food, coastal protection, and also it supports tourism, the tourism economy, and fisheries. Healthy coral reefs provides habitats and nurseries for marine species, including commercially harvested fish species. Coral reefs also provide medicine and food for people and recreation. In regards to the economic opportunity, the tourism economic opportunities, and coral reefs also provide protection as coastal infrastructure against storms, tsunamis, floods, and erosions. The total net benefits per year of the world's coral reefs is 29.8 billion. And tourism and recreation account for 9.6 billion, coastal protection for 9 billion, fisheries for 5.7 billion, and biodiversity representing the dependence of many different marine species on the reef structure for 5.5 billion. So it is very critical to support nature-based solutions for coral reef restoration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Seeing none, members, any questions? Rep. Ganadin.
Department of Land and Natural Resources. Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for your work. In your testimony, you note that in the last several years, Hawaii has experienced 3 major coral bleaching events, last 8 years, resulting in 40% of live coral being lost. Can you explain to the committee what kind of efforts are being done here and internationally to kind of combat these issues related to climate change?
So to climate change, we really focus on the coral bleaching part of it, and so there's been efforts with our coral restoration, and so we have a nursery that has been growing coral, kind of outplanting. We've been doing different things, trying to work with putting out urchins to help kind of deal with invasive limu out there. That helps open up the corals. So there's different efforts that we've been doing.
Do you feel that the DLNR is adequately funded to continue these efforts?
Generally speaking, I would say DLNR doesn't have enough money. I would say for this program, I would say the same thing. So no.
Okay. Can you explain how this measure will assist the DLNR with getting federal funding?
Okay, so I think like the person before me testified, there's the FEMA Hawaii mitigation, I think it's HMA, but it's a 3-to-1 match. So for every dollar we can put out, they'll match $3 for that, right? So it's a really like good bang for your buck. If we can get more money from that, they'll match it. And so that's why we're really looking to this. Like if we can get it, it's a really good match, and that's how it helps us get that money that would be needed.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Members, any more questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 94, HR 101, urging the Department of Health to prioritize testing and research of beach sand contamination levels at Pokai Bay, and requesting the City and County of Honolulu Department of Parks and Recreation to prioritize renovations of the restroom facilities at Pokai Bay. We don't have anyone signed up to testify. We did receive a testimony in support, so no one to ask questions of. We will move on to, is there anyone in the audience would like to testify?
I'm also a member of Surfrider Foundation, and they do a volunteer work of water quality around the state. I think they're requesting the state to take that on. And Pokai Bay and the restrooms is kind of stillish water there, so I think it's support this resolution.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions for the testifier? Seeing none, we will move on to HCR 40, HR 44, requesting that the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency establish a 2-year task force to address key findings validated by the 2022 Resiliency Assessment Report of the Hawaii Maritime Transportation Regional Resiliency Assessment Program Project and Plan Resiliency Enhancements. We have Haima on Zoom.
Good morning, Chair and Vice Chair. This is David Lopez, speaking on behalf of Administrator Barros. Haima stands on its written testimony, and I'm standing by for any questions or added comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Dielenar, in person.
No, testifying. Sorry. The department stands on our testimony.
Okay, thank you. Oh, not that one. Okay. Any questions for anyone else wishing to testify? Any questions for the testifiers? Okay, we will move on to HCR 115, authorizing the issuance of a term non-exclusive easement covering a portion of state submerged lands at Kaneohe, Ko'olaupoko, Oahu for the existing boat ramp and concrete wall and for use, repair, and maintenance of the existing improvements constructed thereon. And this one we have DLNR for.
Hi, good morning, Vice Chair Poi Poi and Chair Chiaba. My name is Rebecca Anderson. I'm the Shoreline Specialist with the Department of Land and Natural Resources. The department stands on its testimony in support of this measure, and we are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the only person signed up to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in person or on Zoom? Okay, seeing none. Members, questions for the testifier? Seeing none, we will move on to HCR 29, HR 30, requesting the Legislative Reference Bureau to study potential solutions and make recommendations for a long-term management plan for Sunset Memorial Park. We have DCCA.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Chelsea Fukunaga. I'm the Executive Officer for the Cemetery and Funeral Trust Program. The department will stand on its written testimony offering comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Todd Yukutake. Okay. Members, is there anyone else wishing to testify in person or on Zoom?
Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES in strong support for Sunset Memorial Park in Pearl City, Oahu. It seems like it's been neglected and has been the subject of numerous complaints by people who have family members buried there. And the years of neglect have led to damage to the Sunset Memorial Park. And also because of the lack of security, there have been a lot of crime and homeless encampments. And so this is a matter of grave concern. So we are in strong support. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. We support the long-term management plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yukutake.
Good morning, committee. Todd Yukutake. I support this bill. I don't have any family members at Sunset Memorial Park. I do have family members in the old plantation cemetery at Aiea Cemetery by Aloha Stadium. And also, there was an issue with Honolulu Memorial Park a while ago when they were, I think they went through bankruptcy up in the Poly. And they're facing probably a similar situation as Sunset Memorial Park, where there's no money, and I'm not sure what's going to happen to the park. But yeah, I support what's finding a solution for Sunset Memorial Park, because it's probably going to affect other places, other cemeteries on the island in the future. Appreciate everything the volunteers, the stakeholders, and the state has been doing for the park. And I do want to find a long-term solution for it, because these are where our family members, ancestors are going to be, and they're going to be historic places too. Basically, a lot of the founders of the towns are probably buried there. So yeah, I hope that solution can be found for Sunset Memorial Park and others. Mahalo.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Rep. Souza.
For Chelsea, please, from the Cemetery and Funeral Trust Program. Thank you for being here. You know, oversight of the mortuary, funeral industry, death care industry generally is very fragmented in Hawaii, as you may be familiar with. And it is a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? And so, you know, when we have issues that come up like this, when it comes to, you know, a dilapidated cemetery, for instance, do you think there's a better way forward instead of dealing with this on a case-by-case basis, where we're having to put forward these resolutions, or we could do something better, like maybe perhaps overhaul the industry, get a death care industry board? I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that.
Personally, I don't really have an opinion. I mean, I can't really speak on the department's behalf on this particular subject, but, you know, we are open to hearing suggestions, and, you know, I think this study could go a long way to kind of expanding towards, you know, like just the industry in general. So, I mean, it could have unique solutions that maybe we haven't explored yet. So I'd be kind of interested to see where this goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Rep. Takayama.
If I may, for DCCA, 5 years ago, the legislature passed into law Act 193, which, among other things, asked DCCA to come up with a long-term, long-range solution for management of Sunset Memorial Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
What progress has DCCA made in those past 5 years towards a long-range plan?
Okay, so as the resolution kind of outlines, the department has surveyed the cemetery and has done its best to identify the graves as much as we could with the records that we had on hand. I believe that the surveyor had also looked at the existing plots, and it's an interactive site. So I don't know if you've been on the website, but it actually has a map of the cemetery, and it has dots that you can like either put in a search of a name, or you can actually look at the individual dots so you can locate it. And that was in the interest of when we eventually dissolve the corporation in the court, and if we are able to locate a viable candidate to take over, it would better assist them in the overall maintenance of the cemetery itself. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Is the website still up?
I believe it is.
DCCA was considering taking it down.
I'm not too sure, but I haven't heard anything, but I believe the website is still up.
Okay. And finally, is it true that a potential buyer or takeover person for the property has come forward recently?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not sure.
Okay,
I mean, if you know somebody, I mean, I'd be happy to take the name.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll discuss this further.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, any more questions? Okay, seeing none, that was our final item, and we'll recess for decision making. Okay, we're back for decision making. We're going to start with SB 193, SD1. We are going to pass out a House, recommendation is to pass out a House Draft 1, just to defect the date to 6/30/3000. Members, any questions? Okay, Chair for the vote.
Members voting on Senate Bill 193, Senate Draft 1, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Rep. Chun. Aye. Rep. Ganyudan.
Aye.
Rep. Hashem.
Aye.
Rep. Morikawa.
Aye.
Rep. Takayama.
Aye.
And Rep. Souza.
Aye.
The recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 78 and HR 82. We're going to take them both up in one motion. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Members, we're voting on HCR 78, HR 82. Recommendation is to pass as is. Noting all members present, are there any reservations or noes? The recommendation is adopted.
Okay, voting on Moving on to HCR 54, HR 56, taking them both up again in one motion. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HCR 54, HR 56. Recommendation is to pass as is. Noting all members present, any reservations, any noes? Seeing none, the recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Moving on to HR 38. We're going to defer this one, noting that there was no testimony submitted for this, this item. Moving on to HCR 62 and HR 64. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Voting on HCR 62, HR 64. Recommendation is to pass as is. Are there any reservations or noes? Recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 107 and HR 113. The recommendation is to pass with amendments. The introducer has recommended some amendments, and we're going to put them in. So I'm going to read them out. Page 1, after line 8, we're going to add, whereas studies have shown evidence of significant health impacts for those living even up to 2 miles away from an active landfill, depending on geography, microclimates, and local mitigation efforts. On page 2, after line 11, add, whereas Honolulu residents living near active landfills have experienced a myriad of health problems, including increased risk of reduced lung function, asthma, ataxia, paralysis, and lung cancer, and as the air quality of their homes become contaminated with unmitigated dust pollution. And whereas these residents have incurred substantial costs as a direct result of living near active landfills, including medical and funeral expenses, home repair and repainting due to the unnatural buildup of dust, and the installation and maintenance of air filtration systems. And then on page 2, after line 25, add, be it further resolved that for property owners of residential units outside of 1/2 mile of an active landfill, the City and County of Honolulu is urged to exempt from real property tax those property owners living in neighborhoods whom in its discretion it deems to have also been impacted by an active municipal solid waste landfill or construction and demolition landfill to a degree that would warrant an exemption and semicolon and. And those are the amendments. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members, we're voting on, I lose my place. HCR 107, HR 113. Recommendation is to pass with amendments. Are there any reservations or noes? Recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 21, HR 23. Recommendation is to pass with amendments. The amendment is to, what the resolution is asking for may also require that the changes be ratified in the county charter. So we're going to add language to clarify and incorporate the charter requirement into the resolution. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Members, we're voting on HCR 21, HR 23. Recommendation is to pass with amendments. Are there any reservations or noes? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 106 and HR 112. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HCR 106 and HR 112, recommendation is to pass as is. Any reservations? Any noes? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Voting on HCR 135. Oh, sorry, I have to go back to my voting on script. Moving on to HCR 135 and HR 136. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HCR 135 and HR 136, recommendation is to pass as is. Are there any reservations or noes? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 153, HR 154. Recommendation is to pass with amendments, and the amendment would just be to specify the scope of the study to focus on areas of Kalama'ula, Kapa'akea, Kamiloloa, and Makakupaia. Yeah, any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, but Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HCR 153, HR 154, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Are there any reservations or noes? Recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 102, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Hearing from the testimony, we are going to remove the Department of Health wastewater branch throughout the resolution and replace it with the University of Hawaii Water Resources Research Center. And we're going to broaden up the scope of the study to expand it to be allowed to investigate other technologies as well as what is listed. So on page 3, line 4 to 5, we're going to delete self-contained, self-powered, and self-cleaning toilets and instead insert the words new technologies exist, that. So it'll read, whereas new technologies exist that can be used in homes that do not have the capacity to connect to existing sewer infrastructure. And on page 3, line 8 to 12, we're going to replace lines 8 through 12 with the words, whereas one such technology is the use of organic biodegradable water clarifiers. On page 3, we're gonna delete lines 14 through 17. This is a technical amendment due to the fact that the solution offered may not actually comply with Act 125 unless it's approved by the Department of Health. And page 3, line 21 to 23, remove Department of Health, insert University of Hawaii Water Resources Research Center. And in the Be It Resolved section, we're also gonna replace Department of Health with the University of Hawaii Water Research Center. Yes. Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HCR 102, HR 139, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 126 and HR 127. Hearing the concerns and the testimony in opposition, throughout the resolution, we're going to instead have the make this request of the United States Department of Agriculture and Natural Resource Conservation Service. So we're going to replace the Department of Health throughout the resolution with the USDA NRCS. On page 1, recommendation is to pass with amendments. On page 1, lines 29 through 30, we're going to delete the words amend its administrative rules pursuant to Chapter 91 Hawaii Revised Statutes. On page 2, line 10, we're going to change the word require to urge. On lines 13 through 14, we're going to remove the approval contingency. And then on page 2, lines 16 through 17, we're going to replace the number 4 with the words review calculations for dust impacts during fallow periods of crop production and recommend best practices to minimize impacts downwind communities. And hopefully this will help to address the concerns from the testimony. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HCR
Chair for the vote.
HCR 126, HR 127, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Are there any reservations or no's? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 104 and HR 110. Recommendation is to pass with amendments. Hearing the testimony from DLNR, we're going to amend it to include the City and County of Honolulu in addition to the DLNR. So on page 2, line 29 through 33, after the word resources, we're going to add the City and County of Honolulu. So it's going to say the Department of Land and Natural Resources and the City and County of Honolulu are requested to independently identify the roads, monuments, landmarks, and public parks within their respective jurisdictions and identify the process for renaming these roads, monuments, landmarks, and public parks from Diamond Head to Leahi. And we're also going to add that reporting requirement from the City and County of Honolulu. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Chair for the vote.
Voting on HCR 104, HR 110, recommendations to pass with amendments. Any reservations or no's? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 50, recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Voting on HCR 50, recommendations to pass as is. Any reservations or no's? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 170 and HR 175. Recommendation is to pass with amendments. There are just amendments needed for technical clarity, consistency, and style. We are going to note in the committee report the DLNR's request for the $300,000 annual budget and the 1 FTE needed to carry out the purpose of this resolution. We're going to move it forward to continue the conversation of the future of what the future of the military in Hawaii will be like. So, any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HCR 170, HR 175, recommendation to pass with amendments. Any reservations or no's? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 70. Recommendation is to pass with amendments. We're going to take the DLNR amendment on page 2, which replaces the DLNR on page 2 of the DLNR testimony, page 3 of the resolution, lines 7 through 11, replacing the Department of Land and Natural Resources with the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development for that section. And then technical amendment on page 3, line 16. We're going to replace the year 2025 with December 31st, 2024. And then for HR 71, there was just a small amendment on page 4 for HR 71. We needed to delete the word concurrent because that's just the House resolution. And this is another one we're moving forward to continue the conversation. And with the introducer here, they can take all the comments and concerns under advisement. Yeah, and to the next committee. Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Chair for the vote.
Voting on HCR 70, HR 71, recommendations to pass with amendments. Are there any reservations or no's? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 25, HR 27, recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Voting on HCR 25, HR 27, recommendations to pass as is. Are there any reservations or no's? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 80, HR 85, recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Voting on HCR 80, HR 85, recommendation to pass as is. Any reservations or no's? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 94, HR 101, recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Voting on HCR 94, HR 101, recommendation to pass as is. Any reservations or no's? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 40, HR 44, recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Voting on HCR 40, HR 44, recommendation to pass as is. Any reservations or no's? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to HCR 115, recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Voting on HCR 115, recommendation to pass as is. Any reservations or no's? The recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The last one, HCR 29, HR 30, recommendation is to pass with amendments. We're going to remove the Legislative Reference Bureau and replace it with the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. So that'll be in the title on page 2, lines 30 to 31, and on page 2, lines 35 to 36, we're going to remove the words Legislative Reference Bureau is requested to follow up with the, and then on page 2, line 37, after the words Consumer Affairs, we're going to insert the word shall report. And then on page 2, line 41, we're going to replace the Legislative Reference Bureau with the DCCA. On page 3, line 2, we're going to delete the number 1, the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. Line 15, number 7, cross out the word Bureau, insert DCCA. And then again on line 18 to 19, replace Legislative Reference Bureau with DCCA. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, Chair for the vote.
Voting on HCR 29, HR 30, recommendations to pass with amendments. Are there any reservations or no's? Seeing none, recommendation is adopted.
Okay.
Thank you, members.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, members.